Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and continuing a series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. And what we're doing today is the 1-year review of MiSTer. I have owned this device for a little over a year, and I'm going to recap the first year with it and see whether or not I thought it was worth it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But when I bought my MiSTer about a year ago, it cost me about $500 with taxes and shipping, and that is not a small amount of money to spend. Honestly, it is not cheap whatsoever. But the question is, did I get the value out of the device that I wanted? And I will say that I've even increased my cost by adding the MT32 Pi hat, so I'm about $600 all in on MiSTer. And like I said, for that price, you could buy an Xbox One, Series X, or a PlayStation 5 and you'd be in at the same cost. But honestly, I've absolutely loved my first year with MiSTer, and right off the top, one of my favorite cores that I've been playing a ton of is the Sharp X68000 core, especially with that MIDI Pi hat. I almost bought a Sharp X68000 last year, but I decided to see whether or not this core would mature enough to the point where I wouldn't feel like spending multiple thousands of dollars before shipping to get one from Japan, and honestly now I don't really feel the need to purchase a computer whatsoever for that system. And that's what I've been finding a lot with MiSTer, is that it's replicating the hardware that I really do want to play and don't own in such a manner in which I don't feel the need to purchase the original hardware if I don't want to. And back to PlayStation 1, a very popular core this year. It has been spectacular to see this come to MiSTer, and I've loved every minute of it, doing all of the previews and tutorials and getting people interested and involved. The maker of this core, Robert, did an outstanding job of getting PlayStation 1 hardware on MiSTer FPGA. And while I love the PlayStation 1, I have a ton of complaints about the hardware itself because it is finicky, and I am on my 4th laser on this console, and to HDMI mod it and put an optical disc emulator in, it's basically the price of a MiSTer, so you're definitely winning there. And playing PlayStation 1 on this core has been spectacular. I did a review against original hardware a few weeks ago, and I'll link that down below, but I feel like for the price of admission, PlayStation 1 is a really good value to knock that $600 down into a place that I feel like MiSTer is becoming worth it. But let's move over to my favorite retro gaming console of all time, and that is the Neo Geo AES. And you want to talk about an expensive console to collect for, this is definitely going to be it. And honestly, depending on your hardware revision, the RGB out's either great or terrible. I've got one that's just straight up terrible. But having it on MiSTer has been an absolute spectacular experience, and this is the type of console that people aren't going to pick up and start collecting for unless they're outstandingly rich, and I am not. All of my collection came from a very long time ago. But it's going to get more people into Neo Geo, and I've gotten a lot of comments saying, you know, people have been playing more Neo Geo games because of MiSTer and discovering the library, and I think that's absolutely outstanding. And that's one of my big takeaways from a year of MiSTer ownership, is hearing how many people have discovered new games and new hardware to play, because you can't all have a giant stack of Neo Geo AES games just sitting around waiting to play, and even I don't own anywhere near a full set. So I think, again, on that 1-year ownership experience, Neo Geo is definitely worth it. But on the arcade side, one of my favorite things to collect for is arcade boards. I went over the CPS2 as well, because not all of these games have been ported home, and the original hardware is spectacular. But Hotego, in his CPS2 implementation, did an amazing job, and honestly, the CPS2 with the Super Gun and the multi is a very big thing to have on the floor, and I can't leave it set up all the time because I don't have a cabinet to put it in. But MiSTer's allowed me to play these games whenever I want, and everything is perfect. It always syncs up, it just works, and that's the great thing about MiSTer. For most of the console cores and most of the arcade cores, it is just plug and play. And some consoles you need a scaler involved. Obviously MiSTer has that built in. I found that I spend more time playing games and less time hooking things up when I turn to my MiSTer, so that's been a great experience as well. But one of my favorite things is handheld cores. Something like the Game Boy Advance. I own a Game Boy Advance, and it has this modded screen, and it is beautiful. But playing Game Boy Advance on my television has been one of my favorite things in the entire year. I've replayed all 3 of the Castlevania games on there and so many others, and being able to easily play it on my TV without having to get a second console out has been amazing. I love just being able to pivot. for 1 hour I'm playing something on the Game Boy Advance, then maybe I want to play an arcade core, maybe I want to go over to the X68000. It allows me to play more games and spend more time gaming and less time going into my closet or my shelves and taking the console off and hooking it all up, because a long time ago I gave up on having every single console hooked up. And that goes doubly for the analog RGB output of the MiSTer. It is spectacular, and I probably use that about 60% of the time playing on my PVMs. Having that output has been spectacular, and turning my TV around to constantly change consoles out is a very trying experience. CRTs are big and they are heavy, and I've been having a ton of fun with the analog support, and honestly, via emulation on a PC, getting an analog signal at 240p is quite difficult. It's also been a ton of fun to see all of the different shadow masks and scanline filters that have been going on. Trash Uncle's been a big maker of those, and they've been amazing, and it's given a lot of life to MiSTer, because even though you can do emulation on something like an Xbox Series X, I love how granular and community focused a lot of this work is. You can basically find a filter to enhance your experience for pretty much any game you're playing. Some games don't need it at all, some like Splatterhouse here I think benefit from it, and you even have the 5x scaling mode, which depending on what type of TV you're using and what game you're playing has been another awesome addition. And what I've really been loving over the entire year of owning a MiSTer is just how flexible and versatile the hardware really is. If you're trying to do something with it, chances are someone's already figured out how to do it and incorporated it into the operating system in and of itself. And if somebody hasn't and you talk about it and it's a good idea, generally someone's probably going to go and quote-unquote fix that for you or add it as a feature. The community is always talking about new things to do, and even on the arcade side, stuff like the Sega 16 platform, again from Hotego, have been a ton of fun, and I know for a lot of people this is the first time they've experienced these games. That's the number one takeaway from comments I really do get over the year of making these videos and owning a MiSTer, how many people are discovering things. A lot of people haven't played a lot of the cave games as well, and most people don't own original hardware because they are multiple thousands of dollars per PCB. And MiSTer is getting people into playing things that they've never heard of. This one puzzle game right here, everyone asked about, and people sent me messages saying, I played it and I loved it, thanks for showing it to us. And honestly, without MiSTer, most people probably wouldn't really know about it. But there's still so much fun to be had. If you want to play old DOS games, something like Doom here on the AO486 core, you can do it. You don't have to be like me and own DOS PC just so you can always play Rise of the Triad, quote-unquote the best first-person shooter ever made. Leave me a comment and tell me why I'm wrong. But with stuff like mouse support with USB, you can start playing adventure games. Even I have to keep an old PS2 style mouse around just to do that. And I've done a lot of comparisons to original hardware with MiSTer because I own a metric crap ton of consoles, and it's basically always at least close to par, if not par. The only core so far I've said is better than the original hardware is the PlayStation 1, because generally Genesis don't break that much. But being able to just pop in my MiSTer next to my TV, pick it up, and be playing a game has been one of my favorite experiences. It's just so quick to change cores, and if you're busy like me, you've got a full-time film job and you do this channel, you find that the 15 minutes it spends to get the console off the shelf, to hook it up, to get your scaler set up, and to pop the game in might be like, 30-40% of the overall time you have to play a game. So honestly, the time saving alone, it is worth it for me. Now on the controller side, there are so many options to use original controllers, to build your own via Arduinos. There is unlimited options on how you want to control your game, and I have loved that about it, that you get so many different ways to get your inputs into the machine. You can go wireless, you can go wired, you can use pretty much every modern controller. There's remakes of modern controllers. Whatever you feel comfortable with, for the most part, MiSTer is going to absolutely accept and use, and that is spectacular as well. The freedom of choice on MiSTer has been another one of my favorite things. I don't generally use wireless that much because there is a little bit of lag. It's not MiSTer's fault, it's just the dongle. But really, any way you want to play your MiSTer, you can. And that's again been my takeaway from the first year of ownership. I have fallen in love with this device. I would never sell my original hardware, but MiSTer is spectacular. It is shocking how much this can do, and I can't wait to do a 2-year ownership review of this as well to see everything that's come. Now I do have one major complaint about MiSTer, and that is it doesn't play 3DO yet. I'm sure a lot of people are going to say it doesn't need to, and I understand that people make what they want to make, but I want 3DO on MiSTer. But yeah, that's my first year experience with MiSTer. Do I think you should buy one if you're into retro gaming? Absolutely. It's spectacular, it's easy to use, it gives you almost unlimited choices, and honestly, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than buying the hardware. Well, we will see you guys next time. Bye bye.